have a very esteemed panel discussion right now. And before I call our panelists on stage, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are today, the Noongar people of the Wajak region, and pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, the International Women's Day is celebrated annually on the 8th of March. It offers an opportunity to reflect on the progress made, to call for a change, and to celebrate acts of courage and determination by ordinary women who have played an extraordinary role in the history of their countries and communities. There's a poem that I read that I would like to share with all of you. It so beautifully describes the real element that a woman is made of. It's called the soul of a storm. She has the soul of a storm and the freedom of the wind. She has eyes like the stars, with moonshine within. With the strength of the sea and lightning of her toes, she dances on the breeze of change wherever she goes. Hotter than a volcano and deeper than the oceans, a whirling, swirling myriad of feelings and emotions. She's the daughter of the earth, primordially impressed. She's water, she's wood, she's earth, she's fire. And today we have a very esteemed group of ladies who have all of these elements in them in its entirety. The theme for the day is Equal World is an Enabled World. And our panelists have not only been successful in their chosen path of life, but also contributed to the communities that they live in. They are enablers of change, proving themselves alongside men, and providing inspiration to the next generation. First, I would like to welcome on stage Ms. Dantu Charandasi, Consul General of Perth, Consul General of India in Perth. Please give her a warm welcome. A commerce graduate from Delhi University and an Indian Foreign Service officer, Ms. Charandasi has held consular positions in the Latin America and Caribbean divisions of the Ministry of External Affairs. She has also served as Consul Head of Chancery and Information Officer at the Consulate of Office in Toronto. While in Toronto, Dantuji also dealt with community and education and cultural affairs. She has been part of high-level delegations and traveled to many countries during her career. She has also a keen interest in theology. Dantuji, welcome to your first Naari event. Thank you. Can I please request everybody to be seated? We're starting the panel discussion, so can I please request everyone to be seated? Thank you. I now would like to welcome Honorable Lisa Harvey, MLA, Leader of the Opposition, Shadow Minister for Public Sector Management, State Development, Jobs and Trade, Federal-State Relations, Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs. She's also a member for Scarborough. A mother and a grandmother of 3, Lisa is a 5th-generation West Australian. She's a business owner and an active member in her local community. After holding several important government portfolios in June 2019, she was elected leader of the State Parliamentary Liberal Party. Lisa, you're no stranger to ISWA and has always supported and attended all our events. Welcome to Naari. I would like to invite on stage now our next panelist, Mrs. Hamida Bhatt. A trained nurse by profession, Hamida ji moved to Australia nearly 35 years ago. A Muslim by birth, married to a Hindu Brahmin, Hamida ji knows how to adjust to any environment. Creating awareness of different cultural issues, she has worked as a multicultural liaison officer, and she's introduced policies and provided interpretation service in the health department. Hamida is passionate about giving back to the society. She's an active volunteer with the Bull Creek Volunteers Community Group and talks on health, working with refugees to help them settle into Australia, and also gives talks to the Gujarati seniors in Giraveen. Hamida ji, welcome to Naari. I would like to invite Ms. Janine Freeman. With an economics degree from UWA, Janine was Assistant Secretary of Unions WA, a board member of WA Work Cover, and Deputy Chair of the Industry Superfund HESTA. Janine was elected in 2008 as Labour member for Nollamara, and in 2013 as a member for Mirrabooka. Janine has held board memberships of both small community and large organizations. She has spent her life representing and working and advocating for working people and their families. Janine has also served as a volunteer for over 20 years in community law service. Janine, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on this panel. I'd like to now invite our last and final panelist, Mrs. Asmita Mahanta. Asmita is a geophysicist working in the resources industry for 23 years. She started her career as a geophysicist in India, and currently she manages a multidisciplinary team comprised of various technical specialists. Her passion includes inclusion and diversity, embedding technology, and building organizational capability and promoting mental health at workplace. Asmita, welcome and hope you enjoy your day. So I'd like to begin today's panel discussion by asking Dantuji a question. Dantuji, we are very and extremely proud that a woman has become the Consul General of India in Perth. Can you tell us about your journey so far?
Thank you, Nivedita. Thank you, ISWA, for inviting me here and to be here with such a prestigious group of panelists here. And thanks for the Naari Shakti 2020. You had really, let me just first appreciate the presentations. They were fantabulous. I have no words. It's really been a lot of effort put in, and congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And warm greetings to everyone here on the International Day of Women. And I would like to take this opportunity, Nivedita, on your question, to first pay tribute to my mother, who's been extremely inspirational for me to be here where I am. And it's really, as we have heard so many speakers and so many kinds of, journeys that women has to really go through in the life. And when you have to choose a career, as very rightly said, it's not very easy, particularly when you're coming into the Indian Foreign Service, where you have lots of different kind of responsibilities. And to tell you very frankly, when you actually enter it, you really don't know what you're entering into. But you learn as you traverse through the journey, and you know the deep kind of responsibility which you have to really shoulder once you go, because it's not only we know the level of satisfaction that we bring to our families and to the community and to the nation, but when you join the Indian Foreign Service, then you are actually responsible for the countries.
Yep.
And bringing them closer. And it's, in my family, I come from, you can say, a semi-conservative family, where my mother always wanted girls to be really, going ahead and learning. She herself was a trained teacher, but she had to give up that because she decided to bring us up. And as you know, most of the Indian women do that. So she was very, very forthcoming in wanting me and my sisters to come forward and do something different. And when she heard about my joining the Indian Foreign Service, she was really very, very happy, and that really inspired me to go ahead and take up my responsibilities.
Okay. And that's how you joined the
and
Foreign
I joined,
Services.
I have no regrets, and I feel very proud representing here, including my family and the nation and ISWA here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's very important, the role of a mother in a girl's life. It can shape her into something completely different to what the mother herself has grown up as.
That's true,
Yes. Lisa, what about you? Tell us a bit about your journey from a little girl growing up in Manjima to the leader of the opposition.
Yeah, thank you. And if I can also congratulate the performers, that was absolutely outstanding. I can't imagine the amount of work that went into putting that choreography together. It was really outstanding. I think similarly to Ms. Charandazi, when you get into politics, I don't think you really know what you're getting into until you actually get there. I think Janine will probably agree with me on that. But I think I too would probably draw on the experience of my parents. My mother, in the era where she grew up here in Western Australia, was not allowed to continue on in high school. Like many women around that time, her father said it was the appropriate thing for her to go out and get a job as a secretary.
Right.
And that's what she did. And then she met my father and got married and had 6 children. And at the time my mother got married, women weren't allowed to continue to work in the workforce. So both my mother and my father, I've got 4 sisters. There are 5 girls in my family and 1 boy. And my mother and my father were always very encouraging of us to make the most of every opportunity to continue with our education, to carve out a career for ourselves, and to always believe in ourselves and take on big challenges to try and achieve big goals. And that's what my sisters and I have done. So it really does come from my mother always wanted us to have all of the opportunities that she was never permitted to have.
Amazing. So that's the second example of a mum actually encouraging the daughters to go ahead and do something much better. Yeah. I've just got a feedback that I think all of us are sitting too far behind. So if you don't mind, can we move a little ahead so that people can actually see? Sorry. Hamida ji, you came, you came to Australia over 35 years ago. And I know that back then there were hardly any Indians. Did you find settling into a new land and assimilating into Australian way of life challenging? And what was that experience like?
Thank you very much. But before I say anything, thank you for asking me to come. And I'm surprised that when I see all these lovely ladies with I'm really surprised to be here among these lovely ladies who have done such a great job. And I'm surprised that why I'm here, because I'm just an ordinary person.
They'll know soon why you're here.
But thank you. Yes, my experience coming to Australia was really amazing. Today when I see these beautiful clothes in the center and everybody wearing it, we never had anything at that time. So when we arrived here, there was a very small Indian community, and especially the Gujarati, we were just a handful. Although I'm an Indian origin, I have lived in Africa, born there for 2 generations we have lived there. So when we came here, it was a bit difficult for us to settle down. We started looking for some Indian faces or anybody to make us feel comfortable. And that's how we started slowly. And my job as a nurse, which was the best thing which happened to me, besides meeting the Indian people and Gujarati, I met up with lovely Australian nurses who really showed me around and made me feel so comfortable that I just felt part of it straight away. And my young children going to school, they mixed up with the family, everybody welcomed, and all the preparations we had done coming to Australia, like getting the brochures and going to the Australian High Commissioner. Also, we also managed to see Crocodile Dundee for a couple of times. And that's what we thought Australia was till we arrived here, and we found it was completely different. So it's not only my experience, all the people who are sitting here must have all gone through the same thing.
Yeah. That's so true. I mean, we are very blessed to be in this country which is so welcoming and so accepting of everybody that I'm sure you wouldn't have had too much of drama settling in.
No, we didn't. We were very comfortable.
Janine, tell us about your journey so far.
Well, thank you very much. It is also a great honour to be here and to be able to talk to you all. Can I just begin by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land on which we meet, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, their elders past and present. It's always a privilege to be on this Noongar Budja. And I do that because that is part of, I suppose, my journey. And to know the past is to know where you firmly stand in the present and look towards a great and harmonious future. I've always followed my passion. I think my journey has been about, having my mother had a similar experience. She was a telephonist at Australia Post. She used to sit there when Australia Post used to, telecom in those days. They used to take out an exchange, be in an exchange and have to actually, put the lines together. Up there in Kalgoorlie, that was where my parents were born. When my mother got married, she was politely told that that was the end of her career. And I suppose along the way, and she, you know, my mother is a very gracious and wonderful woman who understood that to be the case and then made a life for herself where she supported her family. And when it became, when it became available to her, took up employment. My father was always really supportive. There was always those sort of very traditional roles that went there. But the passion I suppose that injustice for my mother, the injustice that I saw along the way as I grew up. My uncle died in a mining accident, completely preventable, and I saw the tragedy that befell my family because of an accident in a workplace. And I suppose I had a little bit of a fire in my belly, a bit like what the presenter was saying about your career, and just following your passion. And I'm probably like Lisa. People will come up to you often and say, you know, how did you become a politician, and how do I become a politician? And my answer to them is, I didn't become a politician. I followed my passion, and my passion was about justice and, about equality and about acceptance and harmony and integration. And then when the opportunities arrived, I took those opportunities, and, those arrived because, we are a country that now looks to greater representation in our political system of lots of people. So that was my journey, really.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's so important, isn't it? To follow your passion. It doesn't matter what career you're in. As long as you're passionate about what you're doing, you would be successful in any career, right? So we have here Asmita here, who has followed her passion and a very different career. Asmita, you have been very successful in your career in an industry that what many would think is a man's world. You're a geophysicist. So tell us about your journey from being a graduate in IIT India to where you are now. And I'm going to lead on to the next question straight after that for you.
Thanks, Nivedita. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm from Assam. It's a small state in India. And in Assam, the gender concept is slightly different. They treat boys and girls equally. So until I came out of Assam, I actually didn't realize that there is a parity there. So I came to ISM Dhanbad, now called IIT ISM. And I finished my degree in 1997. And during my stay in the campus, there were about 600 boys and about 20 girls. I can see a few of my alma maters.
You must have got a lot of attention there.
Yeah. And that was the perfect ground for me to survive and thrive in a so-called man's world. So we had to learn. My first job as a geophysicist was in India. I was working for an Australian company looking for lead zinc deposit. And I had to go to remote parts in Australia, stay in camps, something very unheard of at that time in India. And I remember in one of my very first camp experience, I worked the whole day. We used to pitch tents. We had a whole retinue of drivers and cooks and everything, but still we had to stay in camps. So I came back one evening and I saw all these women and children, girls mostly, sitting silently in front of my tent. And the driver said, they have come to meet you. So I looked up and they just started giggling and asking lots of personal questions. Are you married? Why are you here? Where's your man? And then they came to the business. One little girl asked me, if I go to school and study like my brother, can I be an officer like you?
Fantastic.
And I said, of course, why not? And I would never forget the face of that girl and lots of mothers and other people around. You know, it's a hope, it's a possibility, something they never thought is possible. And at that moment, I said, yes, I have to actually give a good fight and have to survive.
So that was where your beginning career started, and I think that's where you started to become passionate about women in STEM.
Yes.
And what do you see is the role of a woman in a STEM profession?
This is a topic very dear to my heart.
Only 2 minutes.
If you look at STEM global worldwide, there is an acute shortage of females there. And in the resource industry where I work, less than a quarter of the workforce are women. At the entry level, we kind of start around 25%, but by the time we get to the CEO level, it's less than 1%. So the diversity actually decreases as we go up in seniority. And there is a lot we can do about it, not just personally, but it's bigger than personal issue. It's institutional and organizational factors. But we can start off being, go to the schools, talk about importance of STEM, and tell them what is possible. Be a role model, and those are in the industry, mentor younger women and students. And finally, you have to pave the way. I actually remember a conversation with Dr. Megan Clark. She is the head of a space agency in Australia. And she said when she was a young geologist, she had to fight to work underground. So we owe a lot to the people who came before us, and we have a big responsibility for those who's going to come later.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good job. Dantoji, this is a simple question for you. You have traveled to various countries in your career. I've read your biodata, and it's really impressive, your profile on the internet. How do you adjust to a different environment, different cultures, and most importantly, new people and new friends every time?
Nivedita, the one very positive thing that I can actually say in our service is to get accustomed to various situations, various people. I'd been really fortunate in my 2 postings that I've done. My last posting was in Toronto, Canada, and second being here in Perth, Australia. And one principle of my own life is that you don't have to go searching for friends. Anyone who comes or crosses your path is your friend, and you can always find a friend in that person, irrespective of which part of the world they belong to. You have to only reach out and just make them comfortable, make yourself comfortable, and the journey just goes along. And that way, it has never been a real issue for me to adjust with other community or other persons from other countries. Here, of course, one very small, something that I would like to narrate is when I was going on my first posting to Toronto. I was just going alone, and of course, I've traveled all over the world, but as a posting, that was first. So by that time, I'd already lost my parents and my sister, and we were very closely knit and living together. So we were never kind of, just gone like that for 2-3 years. So when I was going there, so my sister, she was elder to me, and she told me, like, you go there, do your part of work, and just meet up people, do your duties, and like a person, like a student who goes to a hostel, does his studies and then moves on, and those friends and memories that you carry, they are always there with you. And this is exactly what I did when I was in Toronto, was that, I kept close to everyone, and when I was winding up, I never felt that I was leaving anything behind, because you carry all those memories and friends with you wherever you go.
True, very true. Yeah. Absolutely, and I guess you just have to have an open heart and welcoming, and you are a very welcoming person, so I'm sure you don't have a problem that way.
Thank you.
Lisa, you've got a very important position. What setbacks or challenges have shaped you as a leader?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. I think the biggest, probably the biggest challenge that I've had to face really would be around the loss of my husband after his fight with cancer, and just trying to manage and balance all of the things that were going on in my life at the time. You know, at that time when my late husband was ill, I had young children, we had a family business that we were needing to manage. He was in chemotherapy every week. And the Premier of the day, Colin Barnett, asked me into his office and offered me a big promotion to be Minister for Police and Road Safety. And I remember sitting there in the office thinking to myself, this is impossible, there's no way you can do this. No, you've got my eldest daughter's relationship had just split up. She had a toddler, I had these 2 children, I had all of these things on my plate. I had weekly chemotherapy sessions to support my husband with. And all of that was going on in my head. And out of my mouth came these words, well, yes, Colin, if you think I can do that, I'll give it a go. And
Wow. That's amazing.
so after I said, yes, if you believe I can do this, I'll have a go at it, I hopped in my car to drive home and I nearly fainted because I thought of the enormity of the job that I had ahead. But out of that, I surrounded myself with a bunch of people, you know, a really good team of people who wanted to do well and people who wanted me to do well. And we just put a plan together to make it work. I called my parents and told them that I might need a bit more help and need them to step up a bit. And we just put a framework in place to support my family, to support my husband, to support me to do the best job that I could do. So I think that was the biggest challenge, to actually take that leap of faith, because somebody else had seen something in me, in the Premier of the day, that I did not know I had in myself until I actually took the leap of faith and decided to have a go at it and decided to see what I could achieve if I took that step. And so that self-belief is the biggest challenge that I think anybody has, but particularly for women, to not let all of those no voices in our heads talk us out of taking the next step and taking the next promotion. If you take a leap of faith, well, before you know it, you might end up leader of the party, which is where I am now. So that's the biggest challenge.
That is fantastic. I mean, I have always believed that if others think you can do it, surely you can. You've just proven that you could. It's really hard for us to delineate, when so much going on in our personal life, delineate the work and prioritize, and we don't know what the priorities are, but hats off to you for doing that. Thank you. Hamita ji, not many people know this, so I'm going to tell people. In 1997-98, you went for a year to Chennai in India as an Australian volunteer abroad to work as an HIV and AIDS worker. Can you tell us what motivated you to go and what was your experience like?
22 years ago, if you know, HIV and AIDS was really the big issue. Everybody was talking. Everybody was talking about it. And we were all worried, even in Australia, but Australia was not really affected like other countries. So I decided, as an infection control nurse where I was working, to go to uni and do a semester on HIV/AIDS worker and also work with the WA hotline. And then this post came, and I was given a list of the places where I could go. So as I told you earlier, although I'm an Indian, I had been to India only a few times on a holiday as a visitor. I had never lived there. And I really wanted to go there, where my mom was born. My dad was born in Africa, but my mom was born in Gujarat. So this was a good opportunity for me to go for a year. My children had already finished their studies. So I decided, my husband was very kind. He was a geologist, but he said he could manage without me, and he did. So I went to Madras for a year, and I always thought I was an Indian and I could just speak Gujarati, but I realized that it was a cultural shock for me because there are so many things, and even now I can still not move my head or squat or have something which people knew straight away. But I found that it was such a learning experience for me. The poorer the people were, the kinder they were. And I had already worked in Africa where I came. And I thought, look, everywhere you go, where there are women, men, people are people, and they are just amazing. So I taught HIV and AIDS in the hospital to the nurses as an infection control. I also lived in the slums area, worked with the prostitute, and that was a learning experience for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I really, really changed my whole attitude, changed who I was when I came back to Australia.
Wow, okay, thank you. In the interest of time, I think we're running out of time a little bit, but I'd like to ask Janine Freeman. I'll skip it to the last question, actually. Janine, the Indian woman is evolving. You've just seen the presentation. She is ready to explore new horizons, but yet wants the security of her cultural heritage and her familial ties. What message would you give to the modern Indian woman?
Well, thank you. I think the modern Indian woman can work out her messages herself, but I'm happy to give some advice based on my observations of having really a lovely relationship with the Indian community in ISWA over the last 12 odd years. I remember a time when I was going to ISWA functions and there weren't any women on the board at ISWA, and I can remember saying to the president and some of the other members, I think you need to start getting women on the board. And the next big function I went to, they came up to present themselves and they came up with their wives at the same time and all presented themselves with their wives. And I went, I didn't mean that. So I think the challenge of the modern, of the Indian woman in terms of representation is to take the challenge, like Lisa said, to take the challenge and not to stand back and know that you have capabilities and opinions and experiences that will absolutely be valuable to your community and to the broader West Australian community. And can I particularly encourage people to take that leap into thinking about representation into politics? One of the things that I am very proud of about, this is a bit of a plug for the Australian Labor Party, about the Labor Party is that we're doing really well on women's representation, but they all look like me. And what we want to do is make that diverse as well, because that brings a different, democracy should be representative of the people in our community. And from a point of view of both, of any particular political persuasion that you may be, I would encourage you to think about getting involved. You may not end up as a member of parliament like that. It takes a long time to get there, but what it will do is increase your voice so that your voice is heard in all different sectors. If it's not there in community sectors, in the health sector, anywhere, just make sure that that you take up those things. So I would do that, and also obviously, just finishing, I do know that there are many challenges back in India around women's representation and equality, and you certainly need to continue the, the fight, a good fight, for the safety of women and the equality of women, both here, completely the safety of women here and equality of women, but also back in India. So thank you.
Yep. Give us a couple more years, we'll get there in politics too.
Oh yeah, good.
Dantuji, would you like to add to that message?
Yeah, I would surely agree that there's a whole lot that that Indian women can do, and we have heard so many inspirational talks, by different fields just before the panel discussion and the dance drama. And every woman should, I think, at one point of time, just give a gasp and just think like, what do you want to do? And identify that. That is very important, so that you do at least attempt to achieve that. And I'm sure once you have set up your mind, there will always be opportunities ready to embrace you, and all like-minded people will be there to help you out. There will surely be challenges. Life cannot move without challenges, and for women, surely it is, always double challenges than what maybe men may face in today's world. But I think that safety has been an issue everywhere, irrespective of wherever it is. And measures should be taken and are being taken. I think no government wants their, the women in their countries to be unsafe. I think these are being taken care by the government. It is also equally the duty of the community also to come forward and look up how we can contribute to that.
Absolutely. Lisa, would you like to add to that a little bit?
I think probably the message to Indian women would be the same message that I'd give to all women, which is support each other. I think, when you've got one woman with a really good idea or a goal that she wants to achieve, if you can get some other women and men around you to support you to achieve that, everybody then gets to move forward together. And I think that's something that women don't necessarily do that well, is actually support each other and hold the hand out to somebody coming forward to help them up. And that's one of to go to the representation of women in politics. I mean, that's what we've done in the Liberal Party. We have a particular project called the Empowering the Emergent Women program, and we're actually drawing women into our party, getting them to understand what the policies of our party are, and to, with a view to having those women be prepared to stand up for pre-selection and to stand as people to represent our party. And we're trying to bring women, but also people from multicultural backgrounds into our party through those processes, so that we have to reflect the community we represent. And we are the most multicultural state in Australia. But if you have a look at the parliament, it's not reflective of that multicultural or gender diversity. So every party needs to do their bit to try and reflect that. And we've certainly got that program well in train now in the Liberal Party. It won't be achieved at the next election for the state in 2021, but by 2025 that program will have been running for 8 years, and I think by then we'll have a really good, we'll have really kicked some goals around diversity, gender and also multicultural diversity.
Yep. Thank you. Very quickly to Ashmita, a tip for the working woman who has to balance kids. We have often priorities. I have gone through it when we have a super important project at work and I have to go and attend school concerts. How do you manage?
Well, it's all about priorities and having the perspective, and you have to forget the word perfect. You can never be perfect at anything. I found that having a good support system is very important. I'm very fortunate. I've got a wonderful husband who supports me all the time. I've got a good network of friends, school moms, colleagues, all our support system. And important to be very organized, disciplined, have a routine. And finally, you need to learn to forgive yourself. You can never be able to do everything you want to, but so long you have got the best intention, try your best, that's it.
That's such an important thing, to forgive yourself. But along with that, I also think it's about self-care. That we have to unashamedly leave aside half an hour of our day only for ourselves. No guilt, nothing. This is not just women, it's also men. Half an hour of a day unashamedly for yourself goes a long way, I think, in self-care. It brings back that balance that we are seeking. So thank you, Ashmita. Very last question, and then we will end, to Hamida ji. Hamida ji, you've done a lot of community work, and there's a lot of women I know who are involved in community. You've heard of Mamta, and there's a couple of others coming up as well. What message would you like to give to people who want to give something back to the communities they live in?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Say about 35 years ago, we were new migrants here, and our population was mainly the young people who came here as a professional. And now our community is growing. We have got so many elderly people, senior people, and I appreciate it more because I'm one of them. And I think those are the people who really need your help. We have got so many voluntary services available. And I see lots of Australian ladies and other community people are active in taking part, like Meals on Wheels, or helping in the schools, or lots of things for the well people really need us. So just think of our role now, giving back to the community and doing caring and sharing. There are some associations where we are really looking for volunteers, and if you are happy to come and help, there are some women who have got cancers or they are going to the hospital, and it's much appropriate if you are the same person from the community who had a cancer or some kind of problem to go and visit them. Most of the time, our volunteers, or in your council, I work in my Melville council, and we work with the refugees. And as soon as they see somebody who's outside, like you said, instead of seeing the Caucasian person, if they see somebody with a different color talking to them, immediately they feel comfortable. You don't need to talk their language, but they feel something, they associate you with the migrant. So there are some services available, and so look outside the box and try to be helpful to the people.
Sure. Thank you, Hamida ji. Everybody lives for themselves, for their families, for the people around them. But I genuinely believe that if we expand our circle of love to include people, a broader and broader circle, it is better for the community as well. So thank you for everything you've said, and thank you to our esteemed panelists for all of your wisdom. I really appreciate it, and apologize for the interest of time. We can't carry on this discussion much longer, much as I would like to. Give you another half an hour, but we have to end here. But on behalf of Indian Society of Western Australia, I'd like to present a small memento for all of you. And I request the event coordinator, Dr. Papari Barua, to come on stage. So the first one is for, for Asmita. Asmita Mahanta. Thank you, Asmita. Ms. Janine Freeman. No. Ms. Janine Freeman. Thank you so much, Janine, for coming here. Honorable Lisa Harvey. Thank you, Lisa. Mrs. Hamida Bhatt. Thank you, Hamida ji. And Ms. Dantu Charandasi ji. Thank you, Dantu ji. Thank you so much, ladies.